Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad to welcome you to the first of several events that the Quebec Anglophone Heritage Network has planned for 2021. My name is Dwayne Wilkin, and I'll be your host today as we hear from 10 very determined community leaders across Quebec who did not let this last year of pandemic restrictions curb their zeal for exploring and sharing local history. I don't need to tell anyone how hard this past year has been on history societies and museums and other cultural organizations. Being forced to cancel exhibits and suspend community activities for months on end has placed a great strain on all of the volunteer groups who make up the Heritage Network. Fortunately, as we are going to see, people who are curious about the places where they live and keen to share that knowledge tend also to be very resourceful and resilient. Over the next hour and a quarter, we're going to learn about grassroots projects in 5 regions across 2 time zones, from the Outaouais to the Magdalen Islands, from the Lanaudière to the Eastern Townships. Each group is unique, yet all of them have this in common. They show us history and heritage are all around us, no matter where we live, where we come from, or what language we speak. We are proud to call them Quan members. Now, I'd like to offer a few words of thanks before we get things started. Volunteers are the backbone of the Heritage Network. On behalf of Quan, therefore, let me thank all of you who have ever donated time or money so that these institutions can stay active in their communities. We hope to welcome you back into our museums and cultural centers as soon as we are able to open our doors again. Still, finding ways to support local history and heritage work, particularly in rural communities, remains very challenging in the best of times. Whether you run an archives or a small museum or an historic site, bills always need paying. Repairs are never finished. Dreams are always getting deferred. All 10 projects we're going to hear about today are being funded through a Quan project called Belonging and Identity in English-Speaking Quebec. This was the brainchild of my colleague, Mathieu, and which is being generously supported by a relatively new Quebec government agency called the Secretariat for Relations with Anglophone Quebecers. More about them later. We are grateful for this investment in local culture and hope that members of the Anglophone Heritage Network may count on the Quebec government's continued support in the months and years to come. Now, were these non-COVID times, I might have planned to meet today in person with many of you, Quan's Belonging Project partners, after enjoying a meal and admiring all the great work that you've accomplished. But hey, meeting virtually has its advantages too. Thanks to the internet, we get to show a lot more people out there what we've been up to these last few months. So I want to thank all of the presenters today who have accepted to be part of the show and tell. And finally, a special shout out to my colleague, Glenn Patterson, who has been working behind the scenes today, juggling the Zoom and Facebook controls. Thanks, Glenn. We couldn't do this without you. Now, it's time to travel to Hemmingford and our first guest of the day. Myrna Paquette is the board secretary for a wonderful organization and member of Quan called Hemmingford Archives. Over to you, Myrna.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be part of today's show and tell on behalf of Archives Hemmingford. For those who don't know about us, this is our archives building where we have more than 3,500 documents and historic artifacts in our inventory. We opened officially in our new building in May 2018, as recounted in a recent article in Quebec Heritage News. In addition to caring for a large and growing archives collection, our team of volunteers is always on the lookout for ways to engage with community members. Any suggestions are welcomed. We are working this winter on a brand new bilingual exhibit, which will focus on Hemmingford Buildings heritage and our area's proud apple growing industry. Panels for the exhibit are being funded through Quan's Belonging and Identity Project and will be on display at the archives over the coming summer. I hope by then the pandemic will be over and you can pay us a visit. In the meantime, let me show you some of what you can expect to find. On your right, as you enter, is a welcoming corner that we have designated in honor of Julius Scriver. Born in Hemmingford in 1826, the son of United Empire Loyalists, Scriver later rose to prominence as a parliamentarian about the time of Confederation. He was first elected to the Legislative Assembly of Quebec, representing Huntingdon in 1867. Then in 1869, he became Liberal Member of Parliament for the federal riding of Huntingdon, a position he kept for 31 years. He died in 1987 at age 81. This is the only known portrait of Julius Scriver. It was painted by Canadian artist William Sherwood in 1895 when Scriver was 69. The painting was donated to the archives by his great-grandson, Dr. Charles Scriver. It was in very, very bad shape, having been stored in a basement for many years. Professional restoration cost $5,000, of which Dr. Scriver donated $3,000. Archives members contributed the balance. This is a wooden writing box that Julius Scriver likely used on his constant trips by train between Montreal and Ottawa in the late 1800s. We have nicknamed it his laptop. It was also donated to our archives by Dr. Scriver. As you can see, the box opens up to provide a writing tablet and many compartments for papers. Small hidden drawers were carefully checked. Another interesting item from our collection is this black powder keg donated by Sven Hendrickson. A crest on the bottom shows that it was manufactured by the Hamilton Powder Company, which was founded in 1862. The keg was originally sold by the George Kenny store, situated on Chemin Kenny in Hemmingford. Our collection includes a series of paintings of the 14 Stations of the Cross that were found in the basement of St. Romain Catholic Church that was built in 1893. The paintings were actually from Hemmingford's earliest Catholic church, which was built in 1844. The beautiful case was made by Jamie Patenaude, and restoration of the paintings and frames was carried out by Donald Beebe. Leonard Priest contributed to and coordinated the project. Displayed on our conference room walls are historical photographs that depict political and military subjects. Of particular interest to many is the panoramic scene of Canadian soldiers assembling to go overseas in 1916 during the First World War. It was taken at Champ de Mars in Montreal. Hemmingford's archive is proud to provide state-of-the-art security and collection storage facilities, as well as a well-appointed work area for volunteers and visiting researchers. We hope many of you will be interested in coming to visit. We have much more to show you, maybe even something about your own family. And that's the end of my show and tell. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Myrna. That's wonderful to learn about how far the Hemmingford Archives has come since its beginning, what, nearly 30 years ago now?
1993 was founded.
So yeah, almost 30 years. There's a wonderful story in Quebec Heritage News magazine that in our last issue of December, in which Myrna recounts the early struggles to collect all of the historic documents that relate to the early settlement and later period of Hemmingford, how these documents were kept in the personal homes of the first committee that founded the group. And only was it in recent years that local fundraising allowed Hemmingford Archives to move into a brand new refurbished space. You saw pictures of it. After decades of hard work trying to get the support in the community that they needed. It's a wonderful space. I encourage all of you to visit whenever you can. And I really look forward to your Belonging and Identity project, which is which will be 4 panels interpreting the history of the apple growing heritage of the region. as well as the built heritage of Hemmingford. It's a lovely community and a great project. Thank you very much for being with us today.
And thank you, Dwayne.
Our next speaker is Jody Robinson. She is a member of the Board of Directors of the Lennoxville-Ascott Historical Museum Society, or LAMS for short, as we call it. And I have to let you know, Jody is also on the Board of Directors of the Quebec Anglophone Heritage Network. Jody, welcome. I'm going to hand it over to you right away because we're going to move on quickly here. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. My screen all of a sudden went weird, so I'm just going to share my screen here for the PowerPoint presentation. So as Dwayne said, I'm representing the Lennoxville-Ascott Historical Museum Society, and we are and so we're located in Sherbrooke, Quebec, which is not 45 minutes from the border. We're in historically the area called the Eastern Townships, and it's historically English-speaking area. And so our project and the mandate of the Lennoxville-Ascott Historical Museum Society is the preservation of the history, in particular pertaining to Ascott Township. That includes Lennoxville, but it also includes other cities and towns in the area too, some that are no longer existent, and then some that are still here today. So such as Huntingville, Milby, and Capleton. And so as part of our mandate for that, 30 years ago, we put in place in 1992 7 interpretive panels, 2 in Milby, 2 in Huntingville, and then 3 at what was Capleton Mines. There's a museum, sort of tourist location there today. And as you can see, these panels, after 30 years, are looking kind of rough. The 2 images that you see in front of you right now are I'm sorry. The 2 images that you see in front of you right now, they are looking dated and very old, and you can hardly see the text anymore. And so what we want to do is just refurbish them, bring them back so that way people can still see them and be able to read the information that is contained within them. So for Capleton, for example, the 3 panels that are there, they're right near the bike path. And this is such an important area to be able to recall as part of the heritage. It was a mining complex. There were actually 3 towns, Capleton, Eustis, and Albert mines. At one point, it started in the 1860s with copper ore. It hit a boom during the American Civil War, and then ended up going into decline after that. But this thriving community, it brought in immigrants from, in particularly England, Wales, as well as immigrants from other parts of the townships that were looking for more opportunities and coming here. And so they had their own churches and schools, same with Milby and Huntingville, these, economic important early settlements in the area. In terms of Capleton, they actually even had their own newspaper for a while. It's really, really entertaining, a bit gory, but it's great. And so we're refurbishing these panels. One of the panels, however, instead of just cleaning it up or replacing the plexiglass, we're actually going to be replacing the text, because one of them is on Capleton Bridge. The panels were put up in 1992. The bridge burned, unfortunately, probably because of arson in 2002. And so the information on the panel doesn't reflect this. And so we're going to update that to, unfortunately, talk about the sad demise of the bridge. But people going along this bike path or stopping at the tourist intersection, they can still walk up to where the supports were on either side of the river, look out over the river. And so there's still evidence of that there. And so we're just going to update that particular panel. The other part of the panel that we're going to be doing is yes, and then these are the miners, sorry. The other part of the project that we're doing is a brand new panel. It's going to be in Lennoxville. This is a bird's eye view of Lennoxville from 1881. And it is going to focus on the river, St. Francis River in particular. Lennoxville is located at the confluence of the two rivers. This plays a huge role in the history of the area, starting with the Abenaki. They used it to get it, of course, for transportation, to go in between their different hunting grounds, sometimes to stop as a resting point during their travels. There have been artifacts that have been found here. And then as we go on with settlement, it was, again, located on the rivers for early settlers and so close to so many rivers, with Massawippi leading into a number of others. Then St. Francis leads into so many others. The drainage basin is huge on it. And so it was just such an ideal place to be when transportation, when roads were no longer hardly, they were basically horse paths through the woods in these early years. And then, when we have Bishop's University, the only English-speaking university off island, was established in 1843, as well as the trains. The Lennoxville was on some of the earliest train routes through the townships in the 1850s. And so we're just going to be commemorating some of these aspects of the history through the panels. This is the location of where it's going to be. If you're familiar at all with Bishop's University, it's just on the bottom of your screen. At the top, we have the bridge that comes over the St. Francis. The star is where it'll be. There's actually a bike path that comes through here. It's heavily used all times of year, whenever except for like in the winter when there's heavy snow. But in order to cross this busy intersection, you basically have to wait for the traffic light or the pedestrian light to let you across, and so you're forced to wait there. And it'll be a great location, prime location, to talk about the history of Lennoxville, but as well as of the area. Here's another view of the bridge and the university. Again, this is the one, Massawippi, the old covered bridge on your left, the new iron one on your right. And then lastly, a picture of flood. You can see the water right up to the bottom of the bridge. And the flooding is such an important part, of course, caused by the rivers, again, the huge drainage basin. And it informs so much of the history of the area, and it can wreak havoc. Makes for a great agricultural area, but then there's the downside of all the destruction that it's caused over the years as well. So thanks so much for giving me the time to share that.
Thank you, Jody. Wow, that picture of the flood reminds me of my days at Champlain in Lennoxville. Anybody who's ever gone to school in Lennoxville knows the dangers of the river. Great, thank you very much. I'm going to move on quickly now to the English Community Organization of Lanaudière, otherwise known as ECOL. ECOL's Community Development Officer, Mathieu Desbiens, is in charge of their Belonging and Identity project with Quan. Mathieu, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us started. But just to let you know that ECOL is a relatively new member of Quan, I should say a new partner of Quan's, and a very interesting little community up there scattered around, and a great project that ran into some trouble this fall unexpectedly, but I'll let Mathieu tell the story. Mathieu, I turn it over to you.
So, can you see me now?
Just need to start your video there.
Okay, all right, there it is. So, hello everybody. My name is Mathieu, and I work, like Dwayne said, for the English Community Organization of Lanaudière. We are a community organization with which our mission is basically the promotion of well-being of English speakers. And with time, we realized that a good way to reach out to people was culture. So when we had the opportunity to do, well, we decided to do a movie for the project of identity and belonging, and we chose a subject that we thought was a good example of bridges between the Francophone and Anglophone communities. So we're doing a movie, actually a documentary relating the history of a manor in a seigneurial domain estate, if you prefer, in Mascouche, which is in the south of Lanaudière, where there's a small but still living English community there. When I say small, we are maybe 3 to 5% of the population down there, and of course my cat just decided to come to see me. Sorry about that. So yeah, like Dwayne said, we encountered many problems. Well, I would say hurdles and challenges. The movie is going on. We're in pre-production, and this is why I cannot show you any footage, but I have some images that I will later show you. This is my inspiration every day. Of course, he came to see me now. So when we started the project, the manor was still standing, but as we started, the city decided to demolish it because it was abandoned since 2010. So that was a big of a problem. A bit of a big problem, because we started with the idea of trying to involve the community in maybe saving the manor, which they call the manoir here, the English speaker. And so well, that didn't turn out. That didn't turn out because, well, there's no manor anymore. So we had to start over our project and go to the writing part of it, and also we have to find a tone, because that can become very political, and this is not where we want to go as a community organization. And you don't want to step on any toes. You have to be careful. Some footage is under embargo, so that's another hurdle. We cannot use everything we want to, and also we have to navigate and try to be original and not do what has been done. And one of the objectives was to open the discussion on heritage and how important it is, and to underline that there are other buildings that might be in danger. So this is our project. We're going to be shooting probably at the end of February, and it's going to be ready sometimes in mid-March. And I can show you some of the images we're gonna present. So as you can see, so this is the manor as it was restored in 1930 to 32. And this was at its pinnacle. You'll see it's not like this anymore. This is Mr. Gabriel Christie. He was the first British lord who actually built the manor. Of course, in his time period, it was nothing like that. It was more like a big house. The renovation in the 30s, it was made by a millionaire lady who came from Toronto. This is a drawing of the manor, which would be here. I don't know if you see my cursor here. So that would be the manor, and we can see there's a mill and a miller's house as well. So that was like mid-19th century. This is what it looked like before it was demolished. So we see that there has been a fire in 2012. The big rock pile here was because there's a portion that was already demolished, and this is what it looked like just in October, last October 2020. And sorry about that. This is when I'm saying we want to open and talk about other buildings that might be in danger. This is an example. This is the Anglican church that's not very far from from the seigneurial domain that was built in 1840, which makes it one of the oldest Anglican church in Quebec. And you know, as any sorry, I just want to come back here. As any a church, well, it's not doing that great, and it's possible that, you know, if we don't find any solution, this is an example of what can happen and can be demolished as well. So the film focuses on heritage and the links with not the links, the bond with the community. So I think I didn't go over my time too long. So thank you.
We're going to move now to kind of a couple of special guests who were not originally on our program, but who have gratefully accepted to join us to say a few words. I'm speaking of, in particular, of William Floch, who is the Secretariat adjoint for the Secretariat for Relations with Anglophone Quebecers, and Christopher Skeete, the MNA for Sainte-Rose, and also the parliamentary assistant for the to Premier Legault for relations with Anglophone Quebecers. They have just jumped aboard, so I welcome both of you. Welcome, Bill. You and I have met from time to time over the years. I'm really glad to see you. And Mr. Skeete, although we haven't met, I've heard a lot about you. So I'm just going to turn the floor over to you. Welcome.
Thank you for the introduction. I look forward to meeting you, Dwayne. I hope my reputation precedes me in a good way. I am a great fan of what Quan does. I think it's so important to put forward the awesome contributions of the English-speaking community. You should know, our heritage also includes our unique history within Quebec and long-standing history within Quebec. And one of the things that I always try to remind English-speaking Quebecers, as well as French-speaking Quebecers, is that we have an equal place here, and a lot of us were involved in the same type of fights. One of the things that struck me was when I was doing research on les patriotes, and I discovered that Robert Nelson was a patriote, and he was an English-speaking Quebecer. In fact, of the 600 patriots, 175 were English speakers. So we have this common sense, this common bond that we need to put forward, and we need to educate English-speaking Quebecers and French-speaking Quebecers about our shared history and our shared values. So always a fan of what you guys do, promoting our culture, making sure that it continues to live on, and that unique culture that is uniquely ours, being able to put it forward is always a good thing. Salutations to Bill and to the Secretariat team that's on the line. I won't keep you too long. I know you guys have a busy agenda, but I really wanted to come in today and say hello and to wish you guys well in 2021. I know it hasn't been easy. Just know that we're continuing to fund the Secretariat. We're continuing to fund various initiatives, and we know that now is the time for us to be more present than ever, not less. So you should know that I fight every day to make sure that we get the resources we need to put our culture and our unique history and heritage forward. So thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Skeete. Bill, I turn it over to you. Welcome.
Okay. Oh, thank you. And I'll just try to take just a couple of minutes because I'm very much enjoying the presentations that precede what we're talking about here, and also looking forward to the ones that follow. Just maybe a quick sort of mention about how this project came together. I missed the first part of the introduction, so I apologize if I'm repeating, but we had conducted consultations in the fall of 2019. We went across Quebec, met with many organizations. In fact, we had representatives from culture, heritage and culture organizations in many of the regions where we met with people. And we heard from them, but also from community organizations and other institutions, that there was a sense that that English-speaking Quebecers didn't feel completely accepted or at home or integrated. And part of it was this notion, like a sense of belonging sometimes was missing, either on the English-speaking side or sometimes feeling a little bit of a gap or a lack of appreciation vis-a-vis the Francophone majority. So that was and we talked about it in terms of, what anchors people, what convinced them to make their future in Quebec versus what may call on them to say, well, you know what, I've got greener pastures elsewhere, I'm going to leave, and so on. So the notion of the role that heritage can play in developing a sense of pride in one's history and one's community and a greater sense of attachment. So I think we looked at some of those ideas, and in conversations with Mathieu Farfan at Quan, with Guy Rogers at English Language Arts Network, with Deborah Horrocks at Learn Quebec, Lorraine O'Donnell at the Quebec English Speaking Research Network, and others, what we wound up doing was putting together a collection of community organizations, institutions, who then collaborated in their own sector with their own membership about finding ways to celebrate and support a positive identity for English-speaking Quebecers. And what we're hearing today and seeing today, this is definitely an important piece of that. So I think I can say that we're very excited and proud to see all of the good work that's going on. And we're certainly looking into with Quan and the other players who are helping organize this project, ways that we can continue it into the future. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that. And maybe I'll just end on a personal note by saying that my academic background, I have a degree in history, so it doesn't take much to convince me that the work that you do is important. But also in my own family networks, I've got an aunt and a mother-in-law who spent their kind of a big part of their adult life working full-time on local heritage projects. So I can appreciate how the spirit of volunteerism that English-speaking community is known for often finds its way into the work that your organizations do. And I look back to some of the work that I've done in previous jobs and recognizing the role of heritage. And I'll just comment on one. It was very interesting. There's a fellow named Alan Martin, who was the president of the Compton County Historical Society. And I was working towards a bit of an overview and working for the federal government of efforts of historical societies in the Eastern Townships and what role they might play. And I remember talking to him, and that was an area where the English-speaking community had suffered pretty important decline, and the ability to maintain not only buildings but a documentation center and the museum collection that they've been building up. It's an ongoing challenge. We know that. But I remember something that he said that really stuck with me. He was an elderly gentleman, probably in his 70s or 80s. He did not speak French, and he might have had the air of somebody who perhaps didn't, how did the English-French thing work out? What was the dynamic for him? But he said something to me that has stuck with me. He said, if we don't involve our Francophone neighbors in our heritage and our history, then our chances of maintaining it are going to be much less. So, it'll disappear, without the Francophones. And I found that really interesting, so that rather than seeing it as kind of an us versus them, although there are pieces of that in Quebec's history, he saw it as something that needed to be celebrated together. And I think that's a really interesting message, maybe from what might have seemed like an unlikely source. But I know that from things that I've heard here today, and I know in the work that you do, that you're trying to build bridges. You're not trying to tell a story that's going to be explosive or politically unsound. You're trying to build bridges all the time in your work. So I guess I would just underline that, how much we appreciate the work you're doing. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dwayne and say I'm looking forward to the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. And we do also look forward to the continuing partnership with the provincial government in support of heritage. Our next stop is in the town of New Carlisle. New Carlisle is situated on the Gaspé coast, for those of you who haven't yet had the pleasure of driving down there. Beautiful community, great people, and the home of one of our core members almost since the beginning of Quan's existence, Heritage New Carlisle. I'm pleased to introduce Sandi Beebe, who is the current executive director of Heritage New Carlisle, and Heritage New Carlisle's president, Betty Ann Smollet. Welcome.
Dwayne, my sense is they disappeared from the Zoom call. Sorry to leave you. She's supposed to rejoin on the phone.
Should we pop over to Jane then? In that case,
Jane, if you're ready, it'd be lovely to have you, Jane.
Okay. I will fill the gap. Hi.
Hi, Jane. We'll just reverse the order of your presentations. Sorry, this is life on Zoom. So Jane is a member of the board of directors. I'll put my picture on for a second. Jane is member of the board of directors of the Société d'Histoire de Canton de Hautfort, so the the Orford County Historical Society. We just met last year. I began hearing about this new organization, and you know, when I was growing up, I the sort of in the foothills of the Orford Massif, and Jane is really shaking things up there with her committee. So Jane, you are one of our Belonging Project partners. Tell us what you're doing and what's going on over in your neck of the woods.
Okay, well, thank you, Dwayne, and thanks to Quan, because the SOCO, or the Société d'Histoire du Canton d'Orford, is a new history society. It's only existed since 2018. And we have none of the facilities that we've been hearing about with buildings and things like that. But we do have a dynamic group of people interested in working on the history of Orford Township. So I thought that I would position Orford Township because it's not always very well known. It's one of the municipalities of the regional municipality of Memphremagog. The existing municipality, Canton d'Orford, is the western part of the original township that was created in 1801 as a sister township, in a sense, to Ascot that Jody talked about before. It's north of Magog, north of Otter Route 10, and it's east of the former Shefford County. That's more or less our area of activity. We confine our work to the existing municipality of the Canton Orford. And we're very much pleased to be part of this belonging and identity project. The Société d'Histoire is a francophone organization. We produce bilingual materials, but out of the active members, there's really only 2 English speakers, traditional English speakers. The rest are traditionally francophones or are francophones. With various backgrounds from Quebec. But the Orford Township, by its history, has made the history of English speakers in it very important, because it was first settled both by English speakers and by French-speaking or Canadien. The southern part was much more English-speaking, and the northern part up around here, north of Mount Orford, was a mixture from the beginning that became very quickly a francophone area. So we received funding from Quan for a number of projects. The first of these was actually completed in September and October, when we made a billboard and posted it for the Journée de la Culture, which were scheduled to be at the end of September, but got postponed to the whole month of October, and without much actual physical activity. And a series of announcements for various buildings within the village of Cherry River. And these were set up in and available for October for people to walk around and to see the buildings. They were set up. This photograph is taken from the position that the panel was put, so that people could see what it looked like earlier in the mid-19th century, first part of the 20th century. Cherry River began to be settled in the late 1850s, and this picture is from a period of pioneer times, but it was a picture from 1900. So that was our first project. Our second project was one that of a series of what we call banners of reflections of the past. And we produced 4 of these with the support of the municipality in 2018. You can see them there. They're bilingual banners that take up a particular aspect of Orford's history, focusing usually on people that had played a key role in the history of the township. And one of the projects funded by the Belonging and Identity project is a creation of 3 new banners. The first of these looks at the first recorded English-speaking settlers in the northern part of the province. We know that for sure that the Hops were there by 1838. They lived along the Montreal-Sherbrooke Road that the British American Land Company built. For those of you who know the townships, they lived basically right near Lake Fraser. The second banner looks at the very first settlers of Cherry River, who we think probably arrived around 1842, and their 7 daughters. They had no sons, they had 7 daughters who married the incoming settlers and became the matriarchs of the whole village, even though the names of Hoyt and Ryder disappeared because they weren't carried into the next generations. And the third banner looks at 2 widows who were actually farming in the northern part of the township. Nancy Smith, who was a member of the Rayside family, and Margaret Conlon. Both of them were immigrants from Ireland. The third project is to archive the photo collection of Juanita McKelvey, who is a founding member of the SOCO, and the other Anglophone, another English speaker with me. We're working with the Eastern Townships Research Center to do this archiving. It's gotten terribly slowed down because of COVID. We can't go to see Jody, for example, and so, but the project is going forward. But we have a surprise 4th project, which is really inspired by Quan and the virtual tours that a number of people have put up, Mathieu Farfan being one of the major producers of these. And so we're going to have a virtual tour of Canton Orford. You can see that this is the map of the township, and the little circles of our logo indicate the places that we've already got a site analysis. A number of these are very important to English-speaking Quebecers. Bonelli Mills, which was up in here. Some of the developments in Cherry River, and the hunting and fishing clubs that a number of lakes had. I looked at the ones in Lake Boker because that's where we live, but it turns out a number of lakes were important for hunting and fishing. So we'll have a virtual launch of this tour in a few months. We'll announce it on Heritage Line, and we hope that many people will participate. And we plan to do outdoor projections of it once we can get together outside in Cherry River, which is the southern part of the township, and in Jouvence, which is in the northern part. So once again, thank you so much to Quan for allowing this new History Society to get itself going, and we hope to be involved in the future in your many projects. So thank you again.
Thanks so much for your presentation, Jane. It's always encouraging to see great ideas and people who have a lot of energy and imagination go to work on these history projects in their local communities. So it's great to have you as a member, and we look forward to a long relationship going forward. And maybe one day we'll be able to meet in person too. Now, I've got some good news. We're going to be able to return to New Carlisle. Our speakers, Sandi Beebe and Betty Ann Smollet, are waiting on the line right now to show us, in fact, give us a little sneak peek of the Kempfer house. I take it over. You take it over, Sandi.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, I'll tell you all about our Belonging and Identity project. It is called Our History, Our Heritage, and it is 2 outdoor installation panels that will tell the legacy of 2 early immigrant settlers from Germany who came to New Carlisle. They came over to North America in 1776. There's Frederick Ludwig Kempfer and William van den Velden. And what's going to happen is these installations will be put outside in June after the thaw. And then we're going to have a Sunday afternoon picnic because we're still in the COVID situation. So we'll have a Sunday afternoon picnic and we'll have a little reenactment and we'll tell some stories about New Carlisle's infancy. And the idea behind this was to add something different, add something new, some little known information. So it's not what you're going to see in the exhibition, permanent exhibition upstairs, but it's adding more to our story. So now, if you bear with me, I'm just going to switch the camera around and I'm going to greet you as if you're here at the front door of the Kemper House. And there's a window with some stained glass. So I would normally greet you there in the summer. And then we're slowly turning around. We have our staircase here. And we're going to go slowly up the stairs. And we're going to go up to the permanent exhibition. This is our beautiful staircase. We're so proud of it. And when we get to the top here, we're going to turn left. And we're going to be where the Loyalists arrived in 1784. We're seeing the map. We're turning around. And over here we have Betty Ann. Hi, Betty Ann.
Hi, pleased to meet you all.
Betty Ann's going to tell us about the People's Quilt from 1913.
Okay, I think before I even start to talk about the quilt, I'm going to let you have a look at it and explain it is not a very attractive quilt, believe me. To a young person today, they probably wouldn't want it. However, it's made of linen and it has pink embroidery on it. Now, back in this story, it's the People's Quilt, but there's a story wrapped around this quilt. And to me, it's most interesting. In 1905, now we're going to backtrack a bit here. In 1905, a young girl, Annie Billingsley, and her husband, Everett Caldwell, names very well known to this area, were married. They were living in New Carlisle, but somehow they received information from the US concerning an incentive offered to young couples, and that if they went out to Duquette, Minnesota, which is not far from Duluth, below the Lake Superior, they would be offered 40 acres of land and 100 turkeys, I think. And this is what the government was putting out to all the young couples. So Everett and Annie and Everett's brother, and I'm told through studying about it that even some of the French Canadian families from here, they set out to settle out there, and they stayed there, I guess, most of their lives. Now, back to the quilt. The Presbyterian Church here in New Carlisle, it was the first Presbyterian church before it became the United. The people that belonged there, under the direction of the late Reverend Tattry, he was the minister at the time, they were very, very anxious. In 1913, it was an anxious period, as we all know, and as we're having right now. And they wanted to do something to help with the war effort. And so the members of the congregation decided that they would make a quilt, but they wanted to include everyone. So what they did, they gave a square, which was 8 by 8, to people who wanted to take them home. They gave them a square, they gave them the pink floss, embroidery floss, and these people took them home. They, in their own writing, they embroidered their names or the names of loved ones or family members. But there was the catch to this was that they had to give a little donation towards the war effort. So in all, they had 71 squares, 8 by 8. The quilt, by the way, is 2 meters by 3 meters. 71 names or squares. But when we go through and we count the families, there are 81 families on this quilt. So I'm telling you, if you started to, well, I know when I've gone through them all, and it's amazing. And but there was Annie. Now remember, we're going to backtrack a bit. Annie had moved out to Duquette, Minnesota, but Annie's sister, who happens to be my grandmother, she was still living in New Carlisle. So she and Annie must have kept in touch, and she wrote Annie's name on the quilt. So when there was a draw at the end, when it was all put together, they had a draw, and lo and behold, Annie must have won the quilt, because back in the late 50s, 1958, 59, I was just a teenager then. And my parents, my mom, Annie was my mom's aunt, of course, and they traveled out, and I went along with them to Duquette, Minnesota to visit Aunt Annie. So just before we left to come home, Aunt Annie, she came to my mom, and she had this, what I call was an ugly looking thing. And she presented it to my mom, and she said, Anne, which was her namesake, would you please take this back to the Gaspé? Take it to New Carlisle for me. She said, its home is there. She said, people up here, when I'm gone, they won't have a clue about anything concerning this. So my mom brought it back to New Carlisle, packed it away in a box, of course. And in 2002, when both my parents had passed and I was cleaning up their home, I found the quilt. So I looked at it and put it back in the box again. And then later on, I guess sometimes we only get anxious about heritage when we get older. I got it out and I started to read the names, and I thought, oh boy, Kempfer Center had just started, and I thought I should really donate that to the Kempfer Center, because there's history behind this, and I never really studied it that much myself. But then when I did do some searching, I realized that Mr. George Legrand was very interesting, because he went through the books, all the people that worked at Robbins way back when, and some of the names that are on this quilt came to work at Robin Jones and from Jersey, and so there's a lot of history here. However, the quilt, it ended up at Heritage New Carlisle, and as far as I know, I don't think there was anything else that I can say about it. It's just that if you're ever here, maybe you would be interested in having a good look at it, because there's like the Maple Leaf Forever is written on one square, God Save the King on the other square. There's so many different things, and I just
thank you,
everybody. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Betty Ann, for a glimpse at some of the great objects that can be found at Heritage New Carlisle, and indeed in all of the communities along the Gaspé coast. And a reminder to everyone here how powerful objects can be in getting our memories going and telling a story. A lot of our museums do just that every day. They have objects donated to them by members of the community. Those objects come with meaning, and that meaning can be transmitted by means of exhibits, articles, and so forth. So preserving that little bit of heritage has meant a lot for the people of New Carlisle, and indeed all of Quebecers. So thanks very much, and congratulations. We're going to move next to, goodbye now. We're going to move now from New Carlisle back to the Eastern Townships, to the town of Stanbridge East. Those of you who know the townships and are into museums are surely familiar with the Missisquoi Museum. And that is who we're going to speak with next. Mona Beaulac is the new executive director of the Missisquoi Museum and also one of our Belonging Project partners. Mona, I hand it over to you.
Hi, Mona, turn on your video and audio there.
Good, excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
I hate Zoom. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. The Missisquoi Museum is owned and operated by the Missisquoi Historical Society, and it consists of 3 heritage collections in 3 separate sites. The Cornell Mill, which you see on the screen at the moment, is in Stanbridge, and it immerses visitors in the fascinating story of individuals and families and the conflicts and enterprises that shaped the history of Missisquoi County over the last 200 years. The next photo, please. So you'll see one of our exhibits. So that's in the Cornell Mill, that's the Loyalist exhibition. Our second building is Hodges General Store. It's also in Stanbridge, and it contains extraordinary collection of authentic merchandise from the era of the Great Depression and World War II. So you can change the slide, please. So that's the store. Next slide, please, is the interior, part of the interior of the store with some of their some of our artifacts. Our third building is the Walbridge Barn, which is owned by the Walbridge Foundation, and it's in Mystic, which is a hamlet of Saint-Ignace de Stanbridge. And it's a 12-sided barn, which was recognized by the provincial government as a historical site. And thanks to the museum, it is an advanced center for the interpretation of agricultural life in Missisquoi County prior to World War II. So next slide, please. You'll see a bit of the interior of the barn. Our artifacts and archives come from all over the Missisquoi County, which ran from Noyant to Cowansville and from the US border to Farnham. Thinking outside the box when it came to its winter programming this year, we have teamed up with veteran Radio Canada journalists to take a fresh look at 2 defining periods in Missisquoi County's history. Our Belonging and Identity Community Project is called Good Morning Missisquoi and consists of 3 virtual radio shows via Zoom with the said journalist and a panel of knowledgeable and passionate guest speakers. Next photo, please. 2 of the radio shows will be about the Fenian raids, important historical events that happened in our area in 1866 and in 1870. Who were the Fenians, you might ask? Well, they were Irish American rebels who wanted to free Ireland from the British by taking Canada hostage. Their first attack in 1866 failed, but they did pillage homes and stole livestock before being rebuffed across the border. Next photo, please. They regrouped and returned in the spring of 1870, where they were met by a local militia called the Red Sashes, a group made up of merchants and farmers from the area who had prepared for and anticipated a retaliation. We wish to highlight the participation of these local heroes at the Battle of Eccles Hill of 1870. Our first presentation, our radio show in English, will be on March 14th, and the second presentation will be in French on March 28th, both at 10 a.m. We hope to have great participation. The third radio show will be on bootlegging in Missisquoi County, and the content and date will be scheduled in the near future. Our goal with these projects is to create an enjoyable, interactive way to learn local history, and at the same time, engage our community in a discussion about the contributions made to the region by the English-speaking people. Next photo, please. So 2020 was the 150th anniversary, of the Battle of Eccles Hill, and an exhibit at the museum and several events and activities had been in preparation to celebrate this historical event. But COVID-19 definitely changed our plans, but we're hopeful that we will be able to proceed once things go back to normal. If they ever do, we hope so. So stay tuned to our Facebook page and website to stay informed about our commemoration events and activities. Thank you for your time, and thank you to Kwan.
Thank you, Mona. Just before you go, I wonder if I could ask you a question or two about your experience this year in COVID. Now, I know many museums didn't even bother opening this year because of the restrictions and the safety precautions, and really the legitimate fear that many people who would otherwise visit museums had. How did that go for you in Stanbridge East at the museum itself?
Actually, it went very well. We opened as soon as they said we could. We opened at the beginning of July with everything in place, all the sanitary recommendations and stipulations that we had to put in place. I don't think the place has ever been so clean, actually, but it went very well.
Another advantage.
Yeah, it went very well. We already had a trajectory to follow, so nobody had to meet, and it actually went very well. So we're hopeful for the start of May, at the end of May, to open again.
And your the radio broadcast, Good Morning Missisquoi, is a belonging and identity project that began as an idea to bring people together for these live recordings, but of course that's been kind of thrown out the window.
Yes.
How can listeners tune in to these events?
We're gonna publicize it first of all, and then people will be able to register for the Zoom meeting conference. We are looking into doing it live Facebook like you're doing today. So we're not technologically inclined, but we will find someone who is, and we plan to do it that way, such as you're doing today.
Great. Well, thanks again. Thanks for joining us. I believe that we are going to try again to connect with Ezgi Çakmak in the Magdalen Islands. Ezgi is a projects manager with the Council of Anglophone Magdalen Islanders, and they're better known as CAMI. CAMI is also a belonging project partner of Kwan's, and I'll let Ezgi tell us about her community and what they're doing out there. Ezgi, I turn it over to you.
So my name is Ezgi, and I'm working for CAMI. CAMI is a Council for Anglophone Magdalen Islanders. It's a regional association advocating the English-speaking community of the Magdalen Islands, more than 30 years. And the English-speaking community of the Magdalen Islands represents approximately 6% of the total population. We have, CAMI operates two museums in the Heritage Complex, which is the Little Red Schoolhouse Museum and the Veterans Museum. We are only open summertime, and you can see the visitor numbers. We're a fairly small museum that 2,500 people are visiting approximately every summer. You will see on the top corner, you see the classroom of the Little Schoolhouse, and on the right, you'll see our cultural animators dressed up for some animation. The left one is like a school teacher, and the right one is a grandma, because in the basement of Little Red Schoolhouse, there is a grandma's bakery operated by CAMI Social Enterprise. On the bottom, you see the Veterans Museum, and on the bottom right, some people are having fun in our historical heritage complex. Why is this project important for the English heritage of the Magdalen Islands? To answer this question, I would like to talk about what are the other projects we currently have and how this artifact registry project aligns with our museum strategic objectives. First of all, our museum's vision is to act as a driving force in recognizing and preserving the dynamic and unique culture and heritage of English-speaking community of the Magdalen Islands, a heritage that English speakers can be proud of, and one that visitors wish to learn about through the CAMI museums and their cultural programming. With this vision, our overarching objective is reaching excellence in our museum offerings and promoting continuous improvement. So saying that, first of all, we have museum enhancement projects that we outsourced Economuseum Network to help us to improve our museums, from collections to animations, from furniture to the visitor circuits. They studied our museum and produced a report on how to improve our museums in order to give better museum services. Then, one step forward, we have a project that we would like to become an accredited museum institution. We already sent our application. It is very important for us because Kemi's museums will gain greater visibility if we get accreditation. And also, to operate our museums, we are using most of our core funding of our organization. That core funding is given to us by Heritage Canada, mostly for developing projects for the community. As this is the only money we get, and the museums are extremely important to protect the heritage and culture of the community, we have no choice but to use that money for keeping our museums open. If we get accredited, we will have a separate funding for our museums. Then we can deliver more development projects with our core funding. Plus, we will have access to professional museum services and other government project fundings. So our museums will become more sustainable and more professional. To become accredited, we needed to develop professional conservation policies and also have an artifact registry, which we didn't, thanks to Koan. We were able to do this project. The artifact registry is a process to document information about the identity, provenance, and locality of artifacts in the collection. By doing that, we will manage the collections more efficiently. Accessing the information related to the artifacts will allow us to increase knowledge and appreciation for the English-speaking community of the Magdalen Islands, because every item contains lots of information that connects the past to the future. So this project has 4 stages. We already have completed 3 of them. We visited other museum institutions to see best practices and brainstormed about how to proceed. We did extensive research about every item in our collection through our documentation. And also we called local people to get more information if we needed. And we did a lot of online research. We tried to find all the information possible about an item, from the usage date, purpose, previous owner to donator info in almost 22 categories. After that, we started to tag every item according to NAAC standards, took a photo of it, and entered it into a spreadsheet. So what is left to us now is to review the final work and launch the artifact registry. We also would like to create an educational event with the local school to show our work and inspire some students. Also, I forgot to mention that we build an archive room for storing our artifacts that is not in our collection. It's in our collection, but not in the museum. So in this slide, you see, obviously I cannot put all the documents, but you can see the partially how we store every item in our Excel sheet. And this is the work, I documented the work we were doing while we were building our archive room. And this is a picture how we tagged the items. What is next is for the Kuan, we will review and adapt our registry, and then we will do a launch event to launch it. And then we create and deliver educational events around this project. And other projects we are still doing is we will create an archive for our documents and other media. And hopefully we will get accreditation by MCCQ. And we will implement the museum enhancement report by doing all the improvements. Thank you, and have any questions?
Thank you very much, Ezgi. That's great. I'm glad we were finally able to make a connection in spite of the crappy internet service. Something, by the way, all of us here in rural regions face. Hopefully one day that infrastructure will be improved if we're going to live in the world of Zoom. Our next presenter, we're going now from the Magdalen Islands all the way to Western Quebec, into the Outaouais region. Our next presenter is Margaret Phillips. Margaret is the president of Cantley 1889. Cantley 89 joined Quan probably 5 or 6 years ago, I can't remember, but they're a newcomer on the scene. And as Margaret will show, very active in these days in cemetery preservation, a subject that I have that is dear to my own heart. Margaret, take it away.
Oh, just a second. Am I okay? Okay. Hi, my daughter lived in the Magdalen Islands for over 10 years, so it's the one place I love to visit. We're Cantley 1889, and we're kind of opposite of a lot of the organizations, since we're only 8 volunteers that just love history and are trying to make our municipality aware that they do have a history, because they're a bedroom community basically nowadays. They're in the Outaouais, so Chelsea's right across the Gatineau River from us, and Wakefield's just up the river from us, and we're 20 minutes from downtown Ottawa. So that just gives a bit of background. So I'm just going to talk about the project which Quan has kindly helped with. This is a little pretty patch in Cantley, but for us, it's very significant. It's part of the Blackburn Farm, currently owned by Gary Blackburn. Gary's a direct descendant of Cantley's first settler, Andrew Blackburn, who cleared this land 192 years ago, creating Cantley's first farm. Andrew arrived here from Scotland. Sorry. I'll just continue. I think they're. Andrew arrived here, no, can you go back to the first screen, for the first slide, please? Thanks. Andrew arrived here from Scotland in 1829 with 2 of his sons. The rest of the family followed, settling not only in Cantley, but also on Andrew's land directly across the Gatineau River in Chelsea. When Andrew's 2 grandchildren died in 1842, he designated this small piece of his land to bury his 5-year-old Isabella and 4-year-old James. By 1920, the family burial ground had at least 32 graves of 5 generations of Blackburn family members and some neighboring friends. Gary built this white fence to protect the cemetery's 2 remaining stone monuments. The actual burial ground extends well beyond the fence to the mature trees and to the edges of a laneway and 2 roads. The grave markers have all disappeared. Family burial plots were typical of the era before church cemeteries were established. Very few remain today. Fortunately, the Blackburn Family Cemetery does still exist and is one of the largest of the region. It shows us an important aspect of typical pioneer farm life, providing clues about deaths and hardships our early settlers had to endure. This cemetery is one of the very few physical reminders left in Cantley, showing that our municipality does in fact have a significant and fascinating history, of which many Cantley people are unaware. For many reasons, there are challenges convincing our municipality of this and about the value of Cantley's heritage. A year ago, there were signs that the Blackburn Cemetery could be at risk. Next slide, please. Then last summer, a developer clear-cut trees to widen the access road to his future housing development. The developer did have the required tree cutting permit, but managed to cut more trees than his permit allowed. Around that same time, Council informed Cantley 1889 it was not yet prepared to discuss the documentation we had submitted to apply for the cemetery's heritage protection. Next slide, please. Coincidentally, and just in time, Quan sent Cantley 1889 information about the belonging and identity funding opportunity. We had been thinking of installing a descriptive plaque as a way to bring awareness and respect for the site's historical significance. We hoped a plaque might encourage its eventual legal protection. We are so grateful to Quan, not only for the funding, but for positive moral encouragement and giving us some hope. Next slide, please. Our committee began the difficult process of selecting material for the plaque's limited space. We wanted to give meaning and relevance to Cantley's pioneering era, to stimulate awareness and an appreciation for Cantley's deep-rooted history. Our most important resource was Carol Martin's excellent book, but we needed more than just the facts. Our only archival photo of the Blackburn family at their farmhouse was in poor condition. However, we enhanced it, and when we did, we were excited to see details of the people appear. Using old family documents, Gary and his son were able to identify them and also find some of their stories. This photo would bring the plaque story to life. To add to this, we decided to include the names and dates inscribed on the monuments, and also a section of an 1875 map, which shows the Blackburn property and its neighbors. Next slide, please. So the writing began. This is how our committee spent January. A long and tedious process, often frustrating, sometimes overwhelming, always very time consuming, but full of excitement, new discoveries, a sense of purpose and accomplishment, and a pleasure sharing this creative workload with such a great and talented team. Next slide, please. In the distance in this picture, you can see the white fence of the cemetery. Gary this summer made this little beautiful trail through the woods to reach it, and our plaque is going to be installed right at the end of this trail at the white fence where the cemetery begins. And finally, the last slide. Here it is. This is our fourth proof and our final, what is going to be the final plaque. We're going to have an official unveiling of the plaque at the end of May, or whenever we were allowed, with restrictions allowed. And it will be our great pleasure to invite our municipal officials, local media, friends from our neighboring historical groups, citizens of Cantley, and any of you if you're in our neighborhood. After the unveiling, there will be a reception with light refreshments to celebrate this special monument to Cantley's pioneer history. Thank you. There's the picture of the farmhouses. We were quite excited.
Margaret, congratulations. It's really beautiful. Well done.
Thank you.
I know that you were very passionate about this project from the outset, and you've really carried it right through. Sometimes those small projects, well, not so small as it turns out, but small historic sites like cemeteries get forgotten in our communities, but they are so important in reminding everybody, especially when newcomers are flooding in because of the expansion of a large city, reminding them that there is a history there. And I think that's a message that we can take to heart ourselves as we incorporate more knowledge and perspectives of Indigenous heritage in this country as well. Our next speaker is Norma Husk. She is the president of the Richmond County Historical Society. Norma is waiting in the wings now, and because we're running behind, I'm not going to spend too much time with introductions about her project. I'll let her do it all. Norma, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Norma Husk, and I don't have any visuals for you, so maybe at a certain point you can just close your eyes and try to imagine what I'm about to describe. I'm the president of the Richmond County Historical Society, and I'm here to talk about our mural project. We're working on this project in conjunction with the Richmond St. Patrick's Society and with the Wabanaki Nation, on whose unceded territory we're located. At the RCHS, we have taken on our most recent theme as Bridges Past and Present, Connecting People and Places. And when we're thinking about bridges, we're not just talking about physical bridges, we're thinking about bridges between people. So bridges between groups of people, interlinguistic groups, interreligious groups, interethnic groups, intergenerational groups, you get the idea. So central to our image, this is where you can close your eyes. Central to our image is the St. Francis River that runs right through our town. And we have a version of an old wooden bridge that used to cross the river many decades ago. And the current iteration of that bridge, the Mackenzie Bridge. A Celtic cross sits on the riverbank right beside the bridge, and kayakers can be seen in the river enjoying their recreation. In the center of our mural is a young woman who is a descendant of Irish folks who settled in the region, and she's gracing the forefront of the image. She represents the future of our area, and she is holding a basket of flowers. The flowers all represent the different ethnic groups that settled the area. For instance, the French lily, the English rose, Irish shamrocks, daffodils for the Welsh, etc. We also have been, as I was saying, in contact with the Wabanaki Nation, and they have suggested to us a number of significant images that we're going to incorporate into the mural in order to, be representative of their nation. So the concept of our design has been to depict some historical buildings that have been here for generations, such as a church, a school, as well as industries that have contributed to the building of the town, so the railroad and farming in particular. We also want to concentrate on some cultural activities and events that take place every year and have for many years, such as our annual agricultural fair, and for instance, the St. Patrick's Parade, which is, if it were to be held this year, the 144th year. We are not ready really to share our image. We have a rough draft of that image, but it's a work in progress, and so we don't want to kind of give anything away until we have it all settled in our hearts and in our minds. So the center of Richmond's Rue Principale is a park, a small park called Parc René Thibault. It's a gathering place for many family events. And facing that park is a large brick wall. It belongs to Quincaillerie Richmond Hardware. And that hardware store is owned by a young person named Julie O'Donnell, who happens to be the vice president and the treasurer of the St. Patrick's Society. So it is on her wall, that is the perfect setting for our mural, because it's Rue Principale is a one-way street going north, and so the mural will be right there facing anyone who drives, walks, bikes off the street. Because it's right facing the park, right on adjacent to the park, it's accessible to the entire population. So the goal of this project really is to remind everyone who lives in the area that we all belong here, that we have a shared history, that we have all built and contributed to the area's development, regardless of our ethnic identity and our ethnic roots. So with this reminder, of what we have achieved together comes the promise of what we want to be able to build together, that we are able to continue to build together as long as we work together to achieve our common goals. We're extraordinarily grateful to Quan and to the English Secretariat for their project and for their sponsorship of this particular project. And we look forward to welcoming you when it's all up there on the wall for you to see and share with us. Wishing you all very, very good health. And since St. Patrick's Day is around the corner, Salacha. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Norma. I don't think we're going to take any questions at this moment because we are running behind. I'll just add that although we have been able to work with the Richmond County Historical Society to get this project off the ground, I believe that you are still in need of donations to make this come true. So anybody who would like to get involved is welcome to do so. It's an expensive venture, putting a large outdoor mural on a wall using professional, talented artists, and doing it in a way that will last the test of time.
That's absolutely right.
Thanks so much. We're going to go to our last presenter for the day. Staying in the Eastern Townships, we'll be traveling south along the St. Francis River and then down towards the Lake Memphremagog area to the town of Stansted. And we're meeting with Samuel Gaudreau-Lalande, who is the director of the Colby-Curtis Museum. The Colby-Curtis Museum is one of our partners in the Belonging and Identity Project. Samuel, welcome. I know this has been a long day for you, but thanks for hanging in there. And I'm excited to hear about your project, which is a technologically based project, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, thank you, Dwayne. So I will be putting on my slideshow. So for those of you who do not know, the Colby-Curtis is an heritage museum, which is located in Stansted in the southern of the Eastern Townships. It was established in 1929 as the Stansted Historical Society. The picture I'm showing you here, it dates from the 1940s. It's our current building, but at that moment it was a private house in the photograph taken in the 1940s. And the museum has large collections of and archives 15,000 artifacts and 70,000 documents. And it serves the communities east of Lake Memphremagog. So historically, this community was English speaking, hence the more Anglophone nature of the museum. But today the population is roughly half Anglophone, half Francophone. For us, it is really meaningful to participate in this belonging and identity project because it relates to our core mission, which is preserving, interpreting, and presenting the history, heritage and culture of the border regions of the Eastern Townships. So for us, what we had in mind when we heard about the Belonging and Identity Project brought forward by Kwan was that we wanted to do something that would be COVID-proof, that would be educational, and that would, of course, showcase local Anglophone heritage. So the project that we decided to develop are two audio-guided tours, so that would take place outside, resolving the COVID proofness, and it would be a smartphone, free smartphone application. And the audio guide will be read by professional actors. So we developed two circuits. The first one is Carol Croft. Carol Croft is the picture you can see on the top left corner. Is the name of the house that houses the museum today. It has on its domain a large red barn, as well as a beautiful garden, which you can see below. So it is a Victorian villa built in 1859, and the audio guided tour will offer a description and explanation of its architectural and historical characteristics. The second aspect of the audio guided tour, the second circuit, is a tour of Rock Island. Today, Rock Island is roughly a borough in the town of Stansted, but historically was an independent village. And it is a small but surprisingly vertical and dense urban center. If you look at the pictures on the screen, you can see that there are buildings that are 3 or 4 stories tall. But you are talking about here a town center, which is literally 2 streets, a crossing of 2 streets, and that is it. So it is about 20, 30 buildings at maximum, but they are tall buildings. It is sitting right across the American border. In addition to having tall buildings, well, there were banks. So Rock Island was a financial center at the end of the 19th century, early 20th century. And there are as well factories. It was an important industrial center of the area, and this is because of the presence of the Tomiphobia River. You cannot really see the river, but you see a covered bridge on the picture below. So hydraulic energy began powering electricity as early as the 1890s, so much before some other areas of rural Quebec. And the project targets three publics. This audio guide project targets three publics: the tourist who wants to know more about the beautiful Stansted area, the local adult and senior who will be able to rediscover their built environment where they walk every day, and also, especially local children who will learn about the history of their own town through walking around it. So our key idea behind this project is to contribute to a feeling of community, to stories of a shared past, so that we can use it as an educational tool. We know already that the RCMP has shown much interest in the project. We were stopped twice, my colleague and I, when we were doing a reconnaissance tour of Rock Island, when we were inspecting the building environment. So this really speaks to us for the interest of the locals into the project, and the RCMP officers even told us they would really like to know about the project so they can talk about it with tourists that will come at sometime in the future when the border will be open again. So that is it for the presentation.
Hey, thanks very much. You forgot to mention the Del Monte Hotel. I saw it right there, the way it looked like 100 years ago in that picture. I remember the Del Monte Hotel. Listen, thanks for waiting it out. I know we're running a bit late and you had to wait quite a bit to get on, Samuel, but it is appreciated. Just a question for you quickly. When do you suppose these audio tours will be available for download?
So as of this moment, we aim for a public release towards the end of May, the end of May, or early in the month of May. Let's just say in the month of May. Okay, so we will definitely be circulating the announcement.
Super. And I'll just mention too that this will be an excellent tool for the local schools in the area if they wanted to do an outdoor learning activity that was focused on local history and heritage. It would be very suitable with or without the current pandemic restrictions. So good on you. That's it, folks. I wanted to thank everyone today for taking part in our show and tell. If this is your first time at a Quan event, you're out there on Facebook looking in, and you'd like to know more about the Heritage Network, please visit our website. We're at www.qahn.org. There you'll find listings for upcoming heritage events and activities in English around Quebec, plus information on how to become a member. A subscription to our quarterly print magazine, Quebec Heritage News, is just one of the many perks of taking out a membership. Quebec Heritage News is the only English language magazine entirely devoted to Quebec history and heritage. It costs just $30 a year for individuals and $40 for organizations. Makes a great gift idea. And it's a great way to help keep this conversation going. Some upcoming events to mention. Quan begins its third season of our Heritage Talks series this Thursday, February 11th. With Montreal historian and author Rod McLeod. Rod will be discussing how a handful of prominent Montrealers fashioned their city into a hub of art and culture in the late 19th century. You won't want to miss it. You can watch this lecture live on Quan's Facebook page starting at 7 p.m. Quan is pleased to be hosting 8 online talks between now and the end of March, so be sure to check out our website for dates and times. And please join us for the premiere of Alison Kirkwood's documentary, Musical Heritage in Valcartier, which looks at the unique culture of music and dance in English-speaking communities north of Quebec City. The film will be broadcast on Quan's Facebook page in mid-March. Keep checking our website for the exact date and time. There will be an archive of today's Heritage Show and Tell on Quan's Facebook page too, if you would like to look at it later or share with friends. That's it, folks. Have a great week. Stay safe and see you soon.